verse, the psalmist begins by asking a rhetorical question. They wonder why the nations and peoples of the world come together in a futile conspiracy or plotting. It sets the tone for the psalm's exploration of the futility of opposing God. Verse 2. The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying. Verse 2 describes how the rulers and kings of the earth unite in opposition to both God and his anointed one, often interpreted as the Messiah or a chosen leader. This verse highlights the rebellious nature of humanity against divine authority. Verse 3. Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. Here, the psalmist presents the words of those who conspire against God and his anointed. These individuals want to free themselves from what they perceive as divine restrictions and limitations. They seek to cast off the metaphorical chains and shackles imposed by God. Verse 4. The one enthroned in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. Verse 4 is a powerful shift in perspective. Despite the conspiracies and rebellion of humanity, God is portrayed as being seated in heaven, untroubled and even amused by their futile efforts. This verse highlights God's supreme authority and control. Verse 5. He rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying. God's response to the rebellion is depicted here. He rebukes and terrifies the conspirators in his anger and wrath. This illustrates the seriousness of opposing God's divine order. Verse 6. I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. In verse 6, God speaks, declaring that he has established his king on Mount Zion, a reference to Jerusalem, a city considered holy. This king represents God's authority and the fulfillment of his divine plan. Verse 7. I will proclaim the Lord's decree, he said to me, you are my son, today I have become your father. This verse introduces a divine decree where God declares a special relationship with the anointed king, referring to him as his son. This declaration signifies a unique bond and appointment. Verse 8. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. God extends a promise to the anointed king. If the king asks, God will grant him authority over the nations and the entire world. This reflects God's plan to establish his rule over the entire earth. Verse 9. You will break them with a rod of iron, you will dash them to pieces like pottery. This verse emphasizes the authority and power of the anointed king. He will have the strength to rule with firmness, breaking the resistance of those who oppose him, symbolized by the imagery of a rod of iron and shattered pottery. Verse 10. Therefore, you kings, be wise, be warned, you rulers of the earth. The psalmist addresses the earthly rulers and warns them to be wise. They are advised to take heed and recognize the authority of the anointed king. Verse 11. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. This verse advises all to serve the Lord with reverence and celebrate his rule with awe and respect, recognizing the sovereignty of God. Verse 12. Kiss his son, or he will be angry and your way will lead to your destruction, for his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The psalm concludes with a strong exhortation to acknowledge and honor the anointed king, God's chosen one. Failure to do so may lead to God's anger and ultimately, destruction. The psalm ends with a blessing for those who find refuge in God. This psalm, rich in imagery and meaning, ultimately underscores the futility of opposing God's divine order and the blessings that come to those who seek refuge in him.